So, Patti, I want to start by making you talk about being a book scout. One of my favorite things in Just Kids was your incredible attentiveness to not just the fact that you were scuffling for rare books to make money, but that you'd say, the pages were lightly foxed or all the plates were in place, and it just gave me such a thrill. It made me remember my own days, as a book hound, imagining what I could turn some item over for.
Well, I grew up in the 50s where most people in America after World War II were getting rid of their old stuff. They didn't want their grandfather or their parents' stuff. They didn't want the nice porcelain. They wanted Melmac. They didn't want these old leather-bound books. They wanted the Reader's Digest collection. So even as a child, I would go to rummage sales or church bazaars and pick out books that, for like pennies, a quarter. I got a first edition Dickens with a green velvet cover with a tissue guard with a gravure of Dickens. It's just, you could get things like that. And they always, it's never gone away, my love of the book, the paper, the font, the cloth covers, which all of these things are slowly dying out. But
and did you work at rare bookshops at one point?
I only worked at one. I worked at Argosy Books in 1967, though I falsified my credentials as a book restorer. And the old fella who ran Argosy was very touched by me, and he tried to train me, but I spilt rabbit glue all over a 19th century Bible that he said was not really rare. It was just, it was a trainer Bible. So he had to let me go. So that was my brief time in a rare book store.
And you still collect, not systematically, but you have precious artifacts. You showed me a few amazing things. Patti let me hold Arthur Rimbaud's calling card this morning.
I have such nice things. I have a couple of letters of H.P. Lovecraft, a watercolor of Hermann Hesse's. I have a page from Jim Morrison's last notebook, and which all of these things, we don't really own. We have a guardianship of for a while, and they're my things. I look at them and play with them.
Well, you've handed me my next question, which is, I always feel that this relationship, the collector's relationship, also connects very strongly to an attitude of, something curatorial in it, but also, you've been a collage artist your whole life. You've cut things up to make other things out of them, and you've been an appropriator. In gestures as simple as recording Hey Joe and Gloria as among your first songs. As a cover artist, you're a remixer. And I always think that these relationships are closer than people realize, that to collect things is also to want to repurpose them.
Well, sometimes, sometimes it's really just to, resonate life within them. I know a lot of great collectors, all of their things are in vaults. I know people that own Arthur Rimbaud manuscripts, and they're in vaults. And all my stuff is in my room. I look at it, love it, let it sit outside. Sit outside of, a metal box or something. I look at them, and sometimes I photograph them. That's my way of appropriating things like that. But I did naughtily appropriate a 19th century mathematics book of Riemann's hypothesis for a collage, but it was falling apart anyway.
So, I've just read the book about your incredibly gorgeous account of your the origins of your collaborative work and collaborative life, really, with Robert Mapplethorpe, and the grounding in the visual arts is so fundamental to your work, and yet you're known now as a musician and a writer, but you still take photographs. Do you still draw as well?
Oh yes, I mean, it's funny because I don't consider myself a musician at all. I can play a few chords on the guitar. I have no natural gifts as a musician. Obviously, I sing, but I think of myself more as a performer. When I think of myself in terms of my real skills, I would think of myself as a writer and a visual artist before I would a musician. But I don't even remember what the question is. Sorry.
Well, I can pick it up and say, I mean, you and I have a funny thing in common, that in a couple of weeks we're both graduating with a doctorate in the arts from Pratt, which is kind of a weird fate for such unruly students as you and I. Were you ever an art student in any official capacity?
Well, I studied art history at Glassboro State Teachers College, and then I left and I came to New York in '67, and really I studied through Robert. I was drawing at the time. We sat for hours and hours, night after night, drawing, and drawing from each other as well as drawing. And I've studied in my own way. I love art. One of my ideas when I came to New York in 1967 was to get a job at the Museum of Modern Art as a guide. So I knew the story and history of every painting in the Museum of Modern Art, and tried to pitch that as a job, but they scooted me out. But I, like you, an unruly student, but I always dreamed of going to Pratt. I couldn't afford to. I wasn't, like you said, I wasn't the best of students, but I wondered about this, should I accept this honor? And then I thought Robert would really like that, so he really wanted. When Robert went to Pratt, and we lived together in Brooklyn, if a professor came to look at his work, he always asked the professor to look at my work and critique it. Anything that he knew or understood or contemplated, he shared with me. I don't know what he would think. He had a bachelor, and I'll have a doctorate. But
let me ask you a little more about the book specifically, and your sort of present role as a memoirist. I mean, it's a very generic and maybe kind of pedantic question to ask, but I think I'd be very interested in knowing what your writing process is like, how you put this book together, and whether you are working on another book like it or want to write another book in the same mode.
Well, this book was very difficult because Robert asked me to write it. He asked me to write it on his deathbed. I wanted to write it. I have lots of sources. I have diaries, daily diaries. I know the date when I cut his hair, when I first chopped up my hair, when I first met Janis Joplin, when Robert went to a taxi dance I have everything dated. I have lengthy journals. I have his letters. But after Robert died, I had to face the death of my husband, my brother, and my parents, and I found it very difficult to write. And it's only been in the last few years where all of these notes and pages and baskets of writing, I was able to sit and then put it all together. And I made a rule for myself, 2 rules. One, that no matter what I remembered or what I had, if I couldn't see what I was writing about as a little movie, then I took it away, because I wanted the reader to just enter like they were reading a movie. And the other, Robert was not much of a reader. He didn't read hardly at all. So it couldn't be boring. or too digressional, or he would just be agitated. So he would say, Patty, for instance, I had a 2-page meditation on Nathaniel Hawthorne's desk in there, and don't ask me why, but I knew that this had to go. I mean, I can put it somewhere else, but I knew that it was going in an area that might just, sort of stunt the reader, but also agitate Robert.
Well, I'm struck by, of course, I was talking about your art of collage, but in a sense, this was a collaboration with your own past self. You were collaging these journals and notebooks and letters. But the book, of course, has an extraordinary quality of compression, and it does read as a series of scenes that you enter. So the rule you set for yourself, which is one I'd love to impart to any writing student I ever encountered, it paid off splendidly.
And I also tried the book is filtered through our relationship. It's a very intimate book, and you were asking me about would I write another. Well, I didn't think I would write another, but I couldn't stop writing. Once I had become friendly with my voice in the book, I'm still writing, but what I decided to is to write maybe a little trilogy of books that all are in the same time period, but from a different angle. Like I could write about that whole time period, not filtered through Robert and I. And it would engage in other things, how I wrote songs or other people or other things that happened. And I found it that's an interesting idea.
Well, there are other relationships that seem to become pivot relationships that you allude to, like
I could write a whole
Sam Shepard or a
whole chapter on William Burroughs,
Right.
But also we were talking, about Bolano's 2666. It's such a freeing book for a writer because the idea of entering and re-entering and exiting worlds. And I thought it would be very interesting to, expand the world that I began if the people wanted it.
Right.
And it seems like they might, so.
I think they might.
Thanks.
So.
I like your sneakers.
Thank you. They're not vintage, but they're the same.
Doesn't matter. They're classic.
Yeah, that's the word, classic. So, going from my Ramones sneakers, one of the things, from my own perspective as a fan, I was, let's see if I can do this. I was 10 years old in 1974. I went to CBGB's 3 or 4 years later for the first time. They used to
You
let
went to
kids
CBGB's
in.
when you were 13?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But the way
I wasn't even let out of the house when I was 13.
Well, it was only a subway ride. But the way that my friends and I received your career, which was already legendary to us in 76, 77, 78. I mean, you'd graduated. You and the Talking Heads would not appear in a small club anymore. We'd have to go to, a Winterland or someplace.
That's not true. I still went back to right to the end. It's just that I was often on the road. That's all. It wasn't a philosophy.
We were more often in those little clubs seeing, our own peers, high school students who'd started bands, were now taking over CBGBs, and we would see you guys in these little mini arenas and so on. But the concept of punk was so formative for us. It was so powerful. It made it created a possibility for us as listeners and as a subculture that, we could claim our own rock and roll. And that also had its own, had a kind of, adolescent, quarantine aspect to it. Certain things were decisively uncool or unacceptable. We didn't we didn't let ourselves hear how great the music that had preceded punk was, because we needed punk to be our own kind of anthemic thing. Of course, reading your story, it's amazing to see. It shouldn't be shocking, but it was, because of the prejudices I find I still have from that punk identity, how completely continuous with the earlier rock and roll, 50s and 60s, and even early 70s, Janis Joplin being a great example. The development of your role as a performer, as the singer in a rock and roll band, didn't have to do with sweeping the plate clean.
Well, the thing, that's really, that's great. I love hearing about this, because people like Lenny Kaye and myself, we were born in 1946. We saw from childhood on the entire evolution of rock and roll. And so we came, when we started performing in 73 and 74, our goal was we were not punk rock. We were guardians, we felt, of our own history. We felt that rock and roll was becoming more corporate, more glamorous, less a cultural voice. And we wanted to remind people that it was a grassroots art, that it was ours, that it was revolutionary, that it belonged to the people, it didn't belong to rich rock stars, it didn't belong to record companies, it belonged to the people. But we were the messengers of this. We were not, please don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing us to Moses, but Lenny and I often thought we were we saw the promised land. We saw the future for generations. We saw rock and roll as being, belonging to the streets, people playing in their garages. Anyone could play rock and roll. To take some of the star system out of rock and roll. And so we were more the bridge. And the people that came after, even like the Sex Pistols, I knew all those people, all those kids. They came to our shows. I knew the Clash. But a lot of them, it was necessary for them to, as you said, turn their back on the past because of their method, that they had to break through. They had to break through without us and even despise us. And I understood that.
Yeah.
I understood that, but I'm not like that. I would feel, to me, being part of the chain of being that includes, anyone from Raphael to Coltrane to Allen Ginsberg to Jimi Hendrix, to be part of this is something that I embrace. I wouldn't want to turn all of that over. But really, I have no quarrel with people that need to do that.
Yeah.
It's really up to, it's up to the individual and how one declares their existence. I did a similar thing with religion that, certain young people did to us or to, the dinosaurs of rock and roll, but it's all okay as long as we keep the blood infused into the medium.
Right. Well, for a teenage listener, you were on the side of revolution at that time. We would have placed your relationship to the dinosaurs of rock and roll as a very aggressive one. And the irony is that you have always been so engaged with your sources, whether it's William Blake or Van Morrison's song. You've always worn them on your sleeve and celebrated them in this sort of ecstatic way. But by that act, by combining them with an image of renewal and revolution, you could also become a guide back to those sources for someone. What is your relationship to present day music making? Do you listen to a lot of contemporary music when you're thinking about what kind of recording you might make?
No, I mean, I listen to opera, really. That's what I listen to. But I love I mean, and I listen to my son and daughter. My daughter is 22 years old. She's composing all of the time. I listen to her playing. I listen to her friends. My son is a guitar player. I listen, they stick stuff on my computer. Like one day I'm looking at I have all my opera, and then there's like the yeahs, so like, okay, I'll listen to that. The other thing I do is I have a MySpace, and I'm not so active in it, but what I do is I got all these friends on it. I go into their, I go to their space, and a lot of them create their own music, and I listen to them and see what they're doing. And I tour, listen to, a lot of young kids give me their CDs. And to me, I'm just happy to see it prevail. I don't really, when people ask me, who's the new people? Well, to me, the new people are the unknown people. The new people that I embrace are the people that we don't even know who they are. The people of the future, the kids that are, in their basements, or the group that is struggling out there in Brooklyn, or, it's an abstract thing, but they're the people that I invest my love into.
Yeah. You just mentioned your kids, and, one of the things that I think is so stirring to have grown up with your career and as your fan, the fact that there's a kind of mysterious, period in the middle where you became primarily a member of a family, and there's one album in the middle.
Housewife.
A housewife. A suburban housewife.
It wasn't quite suburban,
Not quite.
But
I thought I'd try. So there's Dream of Life as this weird signal coming out of that period in the middle. It's an incredible album. And then, as we now know, you suffered a period of losses and transformations, but you also came back to a time of very fertile productivity, and you have this relationship to your grown children, even play music on stage with you at times. This is something that, for people who have a romance of, alienated romance with, to be creative is to be outside of family. It's to not have children. It's something only young people do, and you have to make a choice. Well, the story of your choices is a very stirring one, but it's also it's incomplete. We don't know how you felt always about moving out of New York and out of your role as the role you'd carved for yourself in the career you had here.
Well, the role that I carved for myself, we had accomplished. I mean, in terms of rock and roll, our mission was to wake people up and create new space for the new guard. Well, the new guard came, and hopefully we created space for them. So I felt that I had accomplished that mission, and being on the road and starting to become quite successful, and the demands and pressures of that, and the media, I felt that I wasn't growing as an artist at all. I wasn't growing politically, I wasn't growing spiritually, and I met a really great person. I met Fred Sonic Smith. He had been in the MC5. He had gone through all of the things that I had gone through, and I had a decision if I wanted to carve a more difficult life with this man or continue the way I was going. And I most happily went with him. I mean, I missed New York City. I love New York City. I missed, the coffee shops. I missed the camaraderie of my band. But it's really a misconception that these were not productive years. This book, Just Kids, came from years and years and years, and those 16 years of developing a writer's discipline, of becoming hopefully a better human being, having children, finding I wasn't in the center of the universe, being more empathetic to my fellow man, so I became more knowledgeable politically, and just seeing how human beings toil. And I had to do all the cooking and the cleaning and the washing the diapers. We didn't have nannies or anything like that. We did everything ourselves, and we didn't make a big income because we both withdrew from public life. But for me, it was the skills and disciplines that I obtained in those years are still, they've magnified all my efforts. So they certainly weren't lost years.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I want to talk a little bit about your reading life. You're so engaged with Roberto Bolaño right now, and you've talked about how you tend to have this consuming relationship with very, very large books in succession. That you spent, you described it as a year reading over and over again Hermann Hesse's The Glass Bead Game, and that now it's Bolaño is you can't get away from 2666. But I also have heard that you reread certain children's books.
Oh yeah,
over and
all
over
the
again.
Time. I walk with all my books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I reread. I love Child's Garden of Verses, and love, of course, Songs of Innocence, which isn't a children's book, but my mother gave it to me when I was a child, so I perceived it as a children's book. Pinocchio, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan. I read these books. In fact, my goal in life, still, which I haven't achieved, I want to, and I've wanted this ever since I was like 10, to write one of those books. I really hope I live long enough to give to the children of the future one wonderful book that they'll love as much as I love Pinocchio. So
that's great.
That's. But I love my books. I've always loved books, and Moby Dick, I guess, was the first big, the book that I plowed
voyages,
through,
yeah.
rereading The Whiteness of the Whale, skipping the whaling chapters,
the blubber,
and so there's nothing more wonderful to me than the book.
Well, you've been talking about William Blake. Will you play us the William Blake song?
Okay, if you want. Okay. I mostly write my songs with musicians, Lenny Kaye being probably the person I've written the most songs with, but occasionally I write a song by myself. And I wrote this little song when I was having a lot of strife, when I felt unappreciated, which I know might seem ridiculous because obviously I'm well appreciated, but it's all relative, sometimes you feel unappreciated. And I was thinking about this, sort of feeling sorry for myself, and I fell asleep. And then when I woke up, this song was in my head, and it was just like the answer. And the answer was that, remember William Blake, who gave us such beautiful songs, poems, was an activist, a humanist, a philosopher, an artist, a printer, and also a casualty of the Industrial Revolution, and was barely had any success in his own lifetime. Not only that, was ridiculed, died penniless, and was nearly forgotten. So, and yet, William Blake was always grateful for his visionary powers, never let them go, and did his work even on his deathbed. He was working on illustrations to Dante on his deathbed. So, and still speaking to his angels. So I just try to remember William Blake when I feel sorry for myself, which isn't too often. Blakey year, I was so disposed toward a mission yet unclear, advancing pole by pole. Virgin breathed into my ear, obey the simple code. One road is paved in gold, one road is just a road. In my Blakey year, such a woeful schism, the pain in our existence was not as I envisioned. Boots that tramp from track to track, worn down to the sole. One road is paved in gold, one road is just a road. In my Blakey year, temptation, yet a hiss, just a shallow spear, robed in cowardice. Brace yourself for bitter flack, for a life divine, a labyrinth of riches never shall unwind. The tears that bind the pilgrim sack are stitched into the Blakey and back. So throw off your stupid cloak, embrace all that you fear, 'cause joy will conquer all despair. In my Blakey year, so throw off your stupid cloak, embrace all that you fear, 'cause joy will conquer all despair. In my Blakey year, in my Blakey year, in my Blakey year. Thank you.
Okay, I've been hogging you, so I'm going to invite.
No, I've been
folks up
hogging
to-
you
okay.
because you've been very generous in spending all this time asking me questions when I know we could very easily turn it around, because
That's kind.
you're a fine writer and wrote such beautiful essays, and it's very generous of you to spend this time letting me do all the talking.
A great privilege.
Or a lot of the talking.
A great
so
privilege.
Thank you.
There are two microphones here, and if people have questions, they should come up and pick one of them. And I don't know quite how much longer we've got, but we'll do this until we're done. And I'm just going to be a tiny bit of a hard ass and say, because the time is tight, not anecdotes, but questions. Thank you.
Question? Anybody? A brave soul.
How about the connection between Allen Ginsberg, William Blake, and Walt Whitman?
What? The difference?
Connection.
The connection,
The connection?
the lineage. Now, and you're part of that, or
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about connection, Allen Ginsberg, who is my great friend and teacher, spoke to me about this. Actually, Alan and I used to talk about this, that we have like we have two trees. We have the genetic family tree, and we have our more, the spiritual artist golden chain tree. And Alan really felt his connection. It's almost like you can choose your ancestors. And we used to play a game like, who are your ancestors? And his were, of course, Walt Whitman and William Blake. And each, William Blake, Walt Whitman, and Allen Ginsberg, all three of these men reached out to people, reached out to the poets and writers and human beings of their time in the future to animate their creative impulse, to understand that they had it first. And then Walt Whitman saying, poet, young poet, 250 years from now, young poet who does not exist, I am thinking of you now, I am with you now. Allen Ginsberg embraced that. Walt Whitman is with me. And he walked with Walt Whitman. He truly walked with Blake. And I think of them all. I did a lot of walking with William Burroughs because we both love detectives.
Well, thank you, and Alan's in the house.
Thanks.
Patti, I'm from former Soviet Union, so first of all, I want to tell you how much big role you and Robert Mapplethorpe and whole this generation played for us when we were starting our own revolutions against the Soviet stuff in 80s and 90s, and I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank you for your wonderful life and your describing, and I'm really looking forward to buying this book about how you went back with your family and raised kids and then came back and didn't lose a track, and that really means a lot to us to see that, you know, the oldest world of 60s, the wonderful freedom world of 60s was not just saying no to the family and saying no to children, but it was saying no to the petty bourgeois desires of the small kind of world. So since we had the period, unfortunately, the world right now, we also and everyone is looking, since the destroying of the so-called Cold War area, and we actually fought the Soviets always because we knew about you guys in 60s and 70s, and it was the same spirit of liberation from this slavery. And you guys, Janis Joplin, all these guys were, for us, it was not Ronald Reagan and Maggie Thatcher. That's bullshit who says that. It was you guys who really generated this revolution in the Soviet Union. So my question is very simple. In 2010, are we condemned to live in a bourgeois slavery, or that could be some freedom coming from your experience? Thank you.
What is the question?
Are we condemned to live in bourgeois slavery?
I don't think that we're condemned to do anything. As long as we're alive, we have choices. And actually, I don't even know what bourgeois slavery is, since I've never experienced it. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. But I think, you know, each generation has to translate for themselves. I myself never felt condemned to anything. I always felt like, you know, no matter what the situation, one could either imagine or create their own portal out of there. So, you know, we have either our physical ability to change, or we have our imagination in times of imprisonment. So that's the only thing I can say about that. Thanks. Yes?
I would like to ask you about how do you experience limitations to freedom of expression? Obviously, you are a wonderful free spirit with wonderful words, but there are so many visible, institutionalized, or invisible, informal restrictions to our freedom of speech. And
I don't know. I mean, I'm lucky. I mean, being an American, I have obviously enjoyed you know, freedom of speech is part of our heritage. Of course, it's one still has to continually fight for this, but I don't know how to answer questions like that, because, you know, we just, each human being, it's like what he just asked. We have to decide, you know, what we want, and if we're in a situation where we have to die for that, then we have to choose whether we want to die. They did die in the revolution, in my country, in this country, they died for their freedom. People die for your freedom. You just have to decide. Sometimes people ask me that, and all they're talking about is a record company doesn't want them to, put a certain song on their CD. Well, fuck them, put it on or leave, I've never been suppressed by, radios. I've had records banned. I've had people not play my records or something because I spoke out about it against Iraq, because I wrote a song called Rock and Roll Nigger, but I still did the work. You just keep doing your work. If a corporation or a big company won't put out your work, you go out on the streets. Before I had a record label, we made our own records and went to parks and sold them for $1, or read poems out in the streets, and I still do that. I still go all over the world and still will go in a square with my guitar and just sing a song. We're a lot less confined than people think. Obviously, there are some cultures and some places where I can't even project what that's like. But we are a lot less confined than when people complain, especially in this country, that they're confined. There's always a way out. There's always a way out. You just have to keep pushing, as Jim Morrison said, break on through to the other side. But as you see, I'm not very politically astute. I'm just like a big Saint Bernard. I just go bounding in any situation and, do what I'm there to do. And if people don't like it, they can, throw me out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but it seems like when you first came to New York, you were really able to engage with this entire community of young artists. And I guess my question is, from the way the city has changed and the whole nature of the way we communicate with people has changed, do you think it's still possible for a young artist to kind of come to the city and find that community?
Well,
now?
when I first came to New York City, I didn't have any money. I didn't know anybody. I did know a few people at Pratt Institute, which is a ready-made situation. Obviously, a school, a college, a place of higher learning is a ready-made situation for a community. But I didn't go to school. I met people, and we did develop communities. It's much harder in New York City, almost impossible to do what we did back then because of how it's changed economically. In the 60s, New York City was down and out. It was a bankrupt city. There was often garbage strikes. You could get an apartment for $60 a month in the East Village. You could, build a whole community of transvestites, or a whole community of actors and poets and singers, or a political community. It was much easier because we could get shitty jobs and get a shitty little apartment without a bathroom, but we were alive and we were together. And New York has closed itself off to the young and the struggling. But there's always other cities, I don't know, Detroit, Poughkeepsie, Newark. You have to find the new place because New York City has been taken away from you. But it's still a great city, but it has closed itself off from the poor and creative burgeoning society. So my advice is find a new city.
Hello, Patti. I just wanted to thank you for how intimate you and Just Kids, you shared your experience when you were 19. I went through a similar experience. I'm 19 as well, and also lost a child when over the past year, and I just appreciate how your strength prevailed and your creative expression didn't die down, or you didn't let depression get in the way of that after a traumatic experience such as that, as losing, well, in your case, giving up a child for adoption. I just admire your strength and your ability to share that with.
Well, it was a hard choice to talk about it, but it's nothing I'm, of course, not ashamed of. It was very painful, and I also want to protect all of the people involved in that. But really, the things that happen to us when we're young do seem more almost, it seems exquisitely painful, and sometimes we feel we won't get over it. I cried really for like 2 years. Didn't even know why I was crying, but we prevail. The human beings are so strong. The things that we have gone through in the evolution of being a human being, and believe me, in your life, you will suffer again, but you also have a million wonderful things that happen. So we have to just try to think in our life. I have a lot of rough things that happen in my life, but I don't look at them as the stepping stones of being a human being. You try to pick the beautiful things, your given life, your first, sense of your own imagination, your first sense of God, your first feeling of love, even, the beauty of feeling when you lose somebody, you feel them in your heart. So, pain is a really important part of being a human being. You wouldn't want to live without it. It's like having, if you had summer, this is why the seasons are beautiful. So, anyway, you'll be fine.
Oh, I just wanted to say that reading your book was almost the pushing of helping me just find my way again in terms of expressing myself and not holding it in. So I appreciate your honesty and your strength. Admire it.
Appreciate your honesty too, and now you can just forge on.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
So we'll be able to do just 3 more. Thank you, everyone who's been courageous enough to step up. I'm sorry if we won't get to every last question.
Cool. Can you talk about your experience of finding a discipline as an artist and a writer? Because I think it's kind of a generally, everybody kind of experiences, if they're a writer particularly, it can be a pretty gruesome and painful and awful experience.
You mean the discipline of work?
Yeah, like finding a kind of routine.
Well, I worked steady jobs since I was 14 from 62 to 72, or 73. So I've experienced the 9-to-5 job. So that was the real painful experience of discipline. But in terms of exercising your imagination or exercising your skills, the mind and the heart and the imagination are all muscles, and they must be exercised. And I think it's very important for us as human beings to set goals for ourselves. I just made a vow with myself when I was very young that I had to write something every day, even if it was a piece of conversation I heard from others. If I didn't have anything to say myself, to be attentive to what people were saying, or to record a dream when I woke up in the morning. And I can honestly say, I would say about 90% of my life, I have written at least 1 line. Sometimes it's several pages, but sometimes it's literally 4 words. But if you give yourself certain, you set, it's almost like the happy prison of existence. Sometimes I pretend I'm a prisoner, and if I don't write my word, I'm going to get solitary confinement. But in any event, whatever game you play with yourself, discipline is a beautiful thing. It's like people that do a lot of yoga or they do a lot of exercising, after a while, your body craves that. And if you sit and make yourself look at a blank page or write or look at your canvas or your violin, work with it just a little, and after a time, you'll crave it. And so anyway, that's my...
Cool. Thank you.
And buy yourself a nice pen and notebook. Sorry, just joking.
Hi, yes. Patty. My name is Claudia, and I just wanted to thank you so much for being here and sharing your how you've been inspired by books. And I was especially excited to hear that of your love for children's books and how you want to write one at some point, because I happen to be an editor at HarperCollins children's books. So my question is, would you like my business card?
Sure, I'll take it. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll wait forever for your call.
Last one.
Yes.
Hi.
This is our, before we have our last person. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I only met Jonathan today, so already I have a new friend, and so it was really great to talk to you.
Great pleasure.
And I love talking in this historic hall and being part of the Penn Festival. So thank you all for coming.
Hi, my name is Jeff, and I live in New Jersey. Actually, I'll say one thing that I'm very proud of, which is that my son's going to be a student here next year, and that's pretty remarkable.
Good.
And that
Good
makes
for
me
him.
feel special to hear you here. You've created a lot of art in your lifetime, and I guess I have my own opinion, having read your book and having the point of view that it should be the National Book Award winner. But where do you put it? Where do you rank this book, if you can, in all of the art you've created?
Well, I don't think like that, obviously, but one thing I will say is that the thing that makes me the most proud of the book is that the people have embraced it. I have no problem in that a lot of my work might live in obscurity, might not even greet the public eye, but I didn't write this book to be obscure. I wanted people to read it. I wanted people to know Robert as I had known him. I was hoping that it might inspire, give some kind of feeling to people of my generation, but inspire new generations. And the fact that the people seem really to like it, they come up to me on the street and tell me, that makes me really happy. It has nothing to do with art so much as it has to do with communication. Sometimes an artist creates without thought of communicating with anyone because we're just impelled to create and might create a poem that is so obscure that no one really can penetrate it. But sometimes we do things solely or most importantly to communicate. And I feel, if nothing else, because one should not critique their own work, that the people have let me know that I have somehow successfully communicated this nice, very nice little story to them.
If I might say, it is great communication, but it is truly a work of art.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. That was great.